unless you already did, I missed it.
Yeah, I'm Matt Holmes. I work at Anthony's office. I'm an associate agent here. Started here in middle of February. After a 23-year career at doing auto parts, decided to change careers and get in the insurance business.
Very cool. You stay on there with me, down the pine.
Yep.
Very fun. All right, and Gabby, you're even further down.
Yeah, so I am down here in Referral. So pretty much just 20 miles south of Klamath Falls. I work for Gary Sheen. We have me in my own office here. We made it a satellite office for me. I'm his associate agent. I started here with Country. It was March of 22. And then I got licensed February of last year, and then just been kind of trying to navigate paperwork and all of those sorts of good things to get me into the associate agent position. And I'm finally here now. So I'm running an office down here in Merrill, and extending the book of business for Gary.
Awesome. Well, welcome to Matt and Gabby. This is our fast start coaching. So you should have received invites for a series of 6 fast start coaching sessions. And really what we do is I'm taking what I did in my role as a consultant for Country. And, I would meet with the brand new agents coming in for the first 12 weeks. And we would, coach through various different subjects. And so I kind of took those and I consolidated those down into just 6 sessions. And then for my agents, specifically for Jimmy and Jeremy just coming on, we're going to do, weekly touch bases like we have been already. So that's included in there. But so we'll cover various subjects. We're going to cover referrals, like how to ask for a referral, the ABCDE of asking for a referral, and so on and so forth. So we're going to cover all of that because these are the most important things that you want to make sure if you're an agent, if you're an associate agent, if you're just out there trying to get business, these are the pillars of making sure that you don't forget these things about prospecting, right? And so referrals is one of those. We're also going to cover COIs and networking. So all the best practices of, do I join a networking group, a leads group? How do I develop COI relationships? What if they don't send me leads? All those things. So we're going to definitely coach through all of that. And then I'm going to talk about organization. That's it. I mean, if you're really good at everything else, but you're not organized in your calendar, and you in the future are going to have staff that you bring on, those are things you got to make sure you have that down. So we'll talk a little bit about that, how to calendar, how to use Planner. I won't get the nitty gritty because Jeremy Muson's here. He's the nitty gritty about the Planner. I just threw that out there, So we'll talk about organization. We will also really talk about how do you intro in an appointment? All right. So when you sit down with a prospect or a client, do you just go right to they came in to talk about auto insurance and you just go, okay, let's get right to your auto? Or do you set yourself up? Do you set it up of, okay, here's what you're going to experience in this appointment? Do you use an agenda? Do you intro that you're going to help them develop a life insurance plan? Do they need help with retirement planning? All of those things, everyone on this call should be doing, right? So we're gonna talk about all of that as the intro to the appointment, creating that consistency with that and how important that is. And then we're also going to talk about closing the deal. So you might be doing a ton of quotes, but it does nothing if you can't close the deal. You can't get them signed on the dotted line. Through those are all things that maybe you guys have been doing for a while, but may have some hiccups here and there or questions. We can address those. And then what else is there? I think that's mainly it. We can also talk coverage. We can also talk how do you explain certain coverages. Are you doing it correctly? We can role play through all that. So these sessions are interactive. All right, this is not just me talking, okay? Because all of you maybe are advanced in some of those areas and need help in others. Okay, so this is the great things about being on as a group is that we can all help each other. All right, so anyway, so any questions? Any questions so far on kind of the lay of the land in the next 6 weeks or so? You guys good? Are you guys excited? Pumped?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
let's go. All right. Well, you know how you think about the things that give you energy, and you really trying to repeat those things every day, so you can, get through the day and have confidence and all of that. I love doing this. Like this is, if I get in front of you all and I get to coach a little bit, I know the days when I don't do that, I'm a little bit more drained, but this gives me energy. So thank you for being on the call and allowing me to help you here. So we're going to talk about referrals. All right, how many of you, I'm just going to throw this out there. How many of you feel like you're really good at asking for referrals? And I'm not talking about getting referrals, right? I'm just talking about being consistent in asking people to help you build your business.
For me, I know it's an area I need to work on, but I'm trying to be a lot more conscious about it. Because it's starting to be something where it's coming toward the top of the minds, and especially for me now being the agent, owning my own little area, it's a lot more than all my previous employments as an employee. But for example, I had to go take defensible space photos out Black Ranch for a home I'm quoting, and had to go to the visitor center to get a pass to get through the gate to get to the gated area, and turned out the person who was monitoring the gate there to hand out passes, she's a realtor. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, if you know anybody in the area, she's like, you got a business card? And I was like, not yet.
Oh, shoot.
I was like, but I will be back with some.
Yeah.
My office isn't so smooth, but yeah, it's something I feel like I got to put a lot more active effort into, and I'm trying to.
So I got a question for you in regards to that. Is this where Canopy Connect, I could send them that information? Since I don't have a business cards yet either, and at least I can gather their information from there, or just get their name and number from your experience?
So Jimmy, are you asking?
Yes.
That, or do you know that it does?
No, so I know it gets the customer's data, like their Dex page, but in order for me, since I don't have business cards yet, to replace that and say, hey, here's my way of quoting you. Should I just give that, or just get their name and number and then call them back more when and then have another meeting with them after that?
I don't know who else here uses Canopy Connect?
We do over here.
Okay, Matt. So do you know how that works?
I don't know if it just basically says I'll have a link or click on to put their information in it, and then that will then basically pull up their insurance company, and then it will send out the backup that all that information.
So yeah, I mean that's Jimmy. If you get somebody that's like, hey, I want you to quote me,
Right.
That would, yeah. I mean, why not? If that's that link and you don't have your card yet, that's that connection,
To make it.
right? You can connect to.
Well, and then I'll have their name or at least their phone number in my phone to send them the link, so I can reach back out to them too. And then,
Or anyone else, give us some feedback on your process of asking for referrals. How do you think you're doing?
I know that I'm definitely super casual about it. And I put it kind of just in conversations here and there a lot. Definitely something I agree that I need to get better at doing it consciously. But I mean, it's something that people always talk about. Oh, what do you do for work? What do you do? What do you do? So it's kind of one of those things that I just kind of naturally throw out. But I do need to get better at consciously asking, especially with current clients. And current prospects, kind of giving them the idea hey, I helped you, who else do you think I should help? Kind of that, but yeah, I definitely need to work on it, and get a little bit better with that too, so.
Yeah. Those are those pieces of, hey, this is the whole package of being an agent, right? An agency owner of owning your business. When you really consciously think of it that way, that you are the one that makes all the decisions, all of the responsibilities on you to make sure this thing is growing, you're no fear, right? You're going to make sure that you're introing, hey, and we'll get into the ABCDE of asking for referrals, which Gabby, it will help. It definitely will help. So, but it's one of those areas like Jeremy mentioned, where it kind of sometimes, oh yeah, I forgot to ask them to ask for a referral, or, you know, ask to help them build my business, partner with me, you know, different ways. This is an area where I would say a majority of agents, oh, it used to work so well, they stopped doing it, you know, type of thing. So, but it's like you can't, you got to keep, like, this has to be a staple in your conversations, and you can make it very natural. So, all right, Nancy, Devin, any feedback from you guys so far on how that's going in your agency?
Yeah, well, I feel like the people that are in my immediate circle, I definitely make it a point that we review, the people that are in my inner circle, we talk about my business all the time. A lot of my friends are like business owners or real estate agents or attorneys, and so they want to see me succeed. So it's something that we always just kind of talk about. I haven't necessarily made a joke out of it, but I insure a restaurant here, and we're doing a birthday for my friend there, and we baked him a cake, and I put a stack of my business cards on there, and it was just kind of like not a joke, but like, yeah, always plug in insurance, like, yeah, gotta take the opportunity. I think with my existing clients, it hasn't been something that I've really touched on a whole lot with them. Like the people that I do business with, they'll mention it. Hey, I've been giving your name out. And I got a text message from one of my clients yesterday, and it's, hi, I paid the scooter policy. I did check to see if the Land Cruiser storage policy is available to pay, as well as that add on to my homeowner's insurance. If you want to pass your info on to my boyfriend, will you mail me some business cards? ? He's a partner in a local real estate company, and I told him in the past I've been really happy with you and would recommend for his clients. And so it's just funny that this conversation comes up now, because I'm just looking at this text message, and I know it's definitely something that I have not reviewed with her specifically asked for. And I'm just wondering how many other opportunities are there that are like that are just kind of floating around. I mean, I'm lucky that just kind of fell in my lap, and she had the goodness in her heart in order to offer that. I got business cards being sent out to her with a little handwritten note, but just makes me wonder, like, how many of my clients are in that position that I don't necessarily know that, would be more than happy to promote me.
Yeah, great example. I think that's the main thing, is you guys got to remember that every interaction that you have with clients or prospects, whether they come in your office and you walk them through a quote or whatever that is, when we get to that one session where it's setting yourself up, you are doing that every time you interact, you're setting yourself up for referrals, right? Because if you don't walk this client or prospect through a process that is repeatable and you do with everybody, that's the whole point of doing it, is that they're sitting there and they get to experience what any referral they send you will also experience. So you to be consistent with that process, and you let them know, hey, whatever you experience, anyone you send me is going to experience the same thing, and so you hope it's positive. You hope it's, you do it with confidence, and you give them a great reason to refer you. But don't forget that is what you're doing with every interaction with the client. You're setting yourself up for referrals, right? If they have a good experience, then they know people, right? So, Nancy, do you have anything for us on your end?
I feel like I'm more challenged with my clients, more so than when I'm doing networking activities that we're there to do, that it's not as I guess it could feel easier and more natural to ask, or assume that that's what we're trying to do is help each other grow our businesses. But, I feel like every client is a little different in the way some are more open to it and easier to talk to than others. And, I had a manager in the past who would say, ask for 3 names, write them down. Would it be okay if I, could you actually give them to me? And I have to be honest, I've never tried that this approach. I feel like it's pretty, like, a lot on them to just ask for that without getting some people's permission to be like, hey, my agent's gonna call you. Even if they give it, that's still like, oh, this is great, but I never done that approach. So I think
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what the best that I can do, like, that this is the process, regardless of who it is that you're speaking with, do it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. So let's just kind of roll into, I've mentioned the ABCDE of asking for a referral. So let me kind of go through what that is, and then we'll talk through those. All right, now, this is, like, if you follow this pattern, is what we call it. It may seem a little rote, but what I want you to do is I want you to make it your own, right? And you may pick pieces of it, and you say, okay, I'm comfortable with this. And so I'm going to work on that. I'm going to implement that piece into my being consistent and intentional with asking for those referrals. So let's start with A. All right, so you're with a client and you get to a point where either you intro that you're going to ask for referrals from the beginning, right? That may be part of your process, or you do it at the end, right? And in that way, it may or may not surprise them that you ask for referrals at the end. But I encourage it to either be at the beginning so they can think about it through the process they're experiencing with you. Think about some people as I walk you through this process and go through the quote and I meet your need, whatever that is. I'd love to help people that are happy with the experience they have with me. So be thinking of that, of somebody that, may need to meet with me as well. I don't know, just right there at the beginning. And then so imagine that we're in that setting, right? And so you ask them a question that is affirming of their experience with you. So let's say you've walked them through a process and you get to the end and you say, hey, so do you agree that this was a positive experience for you? Or whatever question you want to ask them, that is, you want them to be nodding their head. What else could you say? You could say, was this a positive experience for you? Or did you feel like I met your need better than your current insurer? Anything that would, it's an affirmation. Yes, yes, yes. This is awesome. This was great. And then you go into the B and the C I combine. All right. Because I think they work very well in hand together. So that is brainstorming and categories. All right. So you might then say, well, I'm so happy that you had a great experience with me. Here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to help brainstorm with you by throwing out a couple of categories of people that I'd love to work with. And you're just going to roll into the referral just like that. So you help them brainstorm through who they know. Now, Gabby, you mentioned earlier that, and you're not unlike anyone else, like everyone normally is so general. Well, I'd love to help everyone. All right. That doesn't help the person trying to think of who they can refer you. Right. So it's much better depending on like some intentionality, some different efforts you're having in your agency. It's better to be specific with who you're looking for. All right. So it may be a category of commercial. It may say, hey, you know what? I have a lot of breweries that are my clients and country and myself, my process I take the owners through. They're very positive about it. We've been able to help a lot of people. Anyone who owns a brewery. And that's few and far between, right? So I'm throwing that out there, but you get the gist of it. It could be a bakery. It could be anyone in our target market, right? A restaurant owner, whatever that may be. People tend to be more willing to share referrals when they're commercial business owners than they are personal. right? Why do you think that is?
Because it feels like you're giving out public information versus private information. It's like, oh yeah, no, you're just down the street, you know, like it's right there. So it's different, like when it's a place of business versus your home, because that feels so much more private and personal.
Exactly why. People they don't feel like it is invasive, right? And you can walk in there and say, hey, you know, we have a mutual client, Jeremy Busett down the street said I should come in here and talk to you. Oh yeah, Jeremy, you know, whatever. So it's business owners are used to it, right? They're used to it. They know they need referrals too. Every business owner needs referrals. So there's a commonality with on the commercial side. But let's get into just personal, right? So you have a couple sitting across the desk from you, and you've already introed, hey, towards the end, I'm gonna, as we're going through this process, be thinking if there's anyone that you think would be a good fit. And then we get to that point, hey, you know what, let's address kind of, I know I had told you to be thinking of people as you're going through this process. Here's really who I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who just got married. I'm looking for people who have mentioned to you maybe they need life insurance or they need some help with retirement planning. Who do you know that's getting close to retirement? You know, be specific with categories that help jog memories of people sitting there with you, right? If you just say, I'm looking for anyone, and be like, okay, well, I'll keep you in mind. Because it's so general, right? What thoughts do you guys have?
Well, also, it seems like you have for just anyone and make it more desperate to. Please refer me. I need anybody, you know, and
Yeah.
with a lot more desperate.
But if you have like that focus, like, hey, I'm trying to rent all the bakeries in the area, I'm trying to, that kind of thing, shows, yeah, because I feel like it gives you credibility if you're behaving as a specialist rather than. I guess question I have, and so this is a turn of phrase I picked up working at the car dealership I worked at, the word track. They were very big on word track, like having a word track. It's essentially a fancier way of saying a script, but more of something that you can sprinkle into conversation, less let me read this exactly verbatim. Then I guess my question to you, Christine, is do you have like, and I've been kind of writing down some of the stuff you're saying as you're going through here, but anything like specific, you're like, this sentence really works well for me to ask for this or something like that?
Not necessarily, because I more, Jeremy, more on the, like, I want it to be natural for all of you. So I never get specific with, scripting on asking for referrals. The only thing that I do is like, hey, make sure you set it up from the beginning. Because I think that's really important, so they're not surprised at the end, or they think, you know, they're at the end and you met their need. You know, written the auto insurance, you've written the home, whatever that may be, they've signed on the dotted line, purses on the shoulder, keys in the hand, they're ready to leave, and you're like, wait. I need to talk to you about referrals. So I think being very scripted in your intro is probably helpful, and then be a little bit more natural at the end.
Like very much tailor it to, like, you're never going to say exactly the same thing,
Yes.
but like having like a general structure of like, these are the key points I want to hit on. Like I want to hit, and kind of like how we're saying, like, instead of just saying, do you know anybody, do you know any business owners, do you know any brewery owners, like that kind of thing. So I just didn't know that. I guess we're kind of hitting on a lot of that.
Yeah.
For me, it really helps to have, if I already know what I'm going to say and I don't have to think about it and it's muscle memory, it will feel more natural. Even if it is effectively scripted, because I'm not stumbling over my words, it feels more natural. And so I kind of like having those things, at least in the beginning, and then you free flow from there.
Well, here's what we can't do, Jeremy, is in our specific coaching sessions, like we can get, hey, let's create something that you think would work for you, that's repeatable, that's natural for you, that you can say. So yeah, let's do that. For sure.
I second that off of Jeremy.
Different than like my clientele or that clientele, so that makes a big difference too.
Jimmy, did you have something?
No, I said I second that after Jeremy because I need to figure out a good process and all that.
Good, well, we'll do that. All right, so let's transition. So we have the affirmation, like, yes, this was a great experience. Thank you so much for helping. And then you transition into the brainstorming, throwing out some categories, right? So you gotta have that good, and just what Jeremy was talking about, kind of that track into pivoting into that brainstorming and categories. And that's where I know I keep saying it, but for me, it helped to intro it beforehand. So then they weren't caught off guard, right? And so the D is the number one part of this that people totally forget to do. All right. So it's develop. Okay. So you're going to develop the lead. And what that means is if somebody said, hey, you know what? Yes, my neighbor, I was out there talking to her yesterday, and she mentioned something about, I don't know how we got on the subject, but she mentioned something about needing some life insurance, so that's a great, yeah, my neighbor. And so at that point, you want to go to the E, right? Naturally, you want to go to the E, the execute getting the information, getting the lead, all of that you forget to develop. So at that point, if I were across the desk from somebody who said, yes, my neighbor was just talking about life insurance, I say, well, tell me a little bit about your neighbor. All right, do they have kids? Are they married? Are they like what kind of mid-age range? Just so you have an idea, you need one piece of information that you can connect when you actually do get their information and you talk to them, right? You know something about them. Hey, your neighbor Mary mentioned that you just had a baby. Like, congratulations. How's that going? Or you're a new parent, anything that can make the connection. But if you just call and say, hey, your neighbor Mary told me to call you because you had talked about life insurance. Very cold, right? Not as warm. So develop the lead by asking some information about the person they're referring to you. Right? Well, what do you know about this person? How long have they lived there? Whatever it is that you want to ask about it, but come up with something. So that's the development piece. So it's more natural when you execute on the call or the text or the email, however you're going to connect. But so E is the execution of getting the information about the referral. So Nancy, you referred to that in your previous work where it was, hey, make sure you get 3 names. All right. And then how do you get that? So let's walk through the scenario, and they just said, oh, my neighbor just, talked about life insurance. And then you found out a little bit about the neighbor, and then you would say, all right, so here's where I want to make sure that you feel comfortable, giving me, do you feel comfortable just giving me the number? Do you want to do a soft intro and touch base with you next week to get that? Like, how do you want to give them my information? Like, I always found that it's very less invasive, but intentional if you allow them to decide how they want to do that. All right. So Nancy, you kind of alluded to that, right? And it took all the pressure off of me. I would say, hey, you know what? I really appreciate you helping me. So I want to make sure that this is as comfortable as possible, because you can address, it can be uncomfortable for people to say, yeah, call my neighbor. Here's their contact information. But then you're going to get people that are saying, hey, how many referrals do you need? Here's all my contacts. Like, you're going to get those people that really want to help you, and they don't care.
That's the one moment and plus that we have, like, I think I'd rather have them say that and offer that up than ask them for the name. So I like it more natural, like if they want to just contact, right? That's much
Yeah.
more fun.
Yeah. Well, you can even say, like, this kind of goes to your question, Jeremy, about the word track. Is part of that, you can say, hey, you know what? Every time I meet with clients, like, I do, I'm an agency owner. I always love to meet with people that are just like you, and most people have friends that are just like them. So this is where I ask my clients and prospects to help me. If they've had a good experience with me, I'd love to help other people just like you. So you can intro, hey, this is what business owners do. This is what I do in my agency. This is how I grow my agency. is I ask others to help me grow it by getting me in front of people that have needs just like they have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Yes.
So the E is the execution. I always leave that up to the person that's gonna give me the referral. All right, but here's what I do intentionally. I don't just let it go. I don't just say that if they say, hey, you know what, I see her all the time. So let me just mention that and then I'll get you the information. And you're gonna say, okay, fair enough, great. So here's what I'll do. If I don't hear back from you by next Monday, would it be okay if I just touch base with you just to remind you? Always be in control of that last point of contact. All right, that does not seem pushy. It's almost a relief for them. They're like, yes, that'd be great, because I'm probably gonna forget to call you. You know, so as a business owner, you are always in control of that last point of contact, and you intro what that would look like. Right? It's, hey, you know what? You might get busy, you might forget. So I'm just gonna put on my calendar to follow up with you and just see if you're able to get that info over to me. That's all you do. And then you make sure you execute on when you told them you would call them. You said on Monday. If I don't hear back from you on Monday, I'll just reach out. So put it on your calendar, make sure you do it so they know. Now here's what the scenario might look like is they're like, oh my gosh, Jeremy, I totally yes, I saw her, but I totally forgot to mention it. We're busy, we're having fun, all that stuff. I promise this week I'm gonna get to that. You say, hey, no worries. I appreciate you helping me. If I don't hear back from you on Friday, I'll touch base once again. Because they're the ones saying that they want to do it for you.
Yeah,
No.
a line that I picked up from my dad and I really like in that exact vein is pleasantly persistent.
Mhm.
I like pleasantly persistent. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You do what you say you're going to do. And what you're doing is trying to grow your business. And it's not abnormal. It's exactly what a business owner would do, right? I mean, you see it all over. You go to a restaurant. Share this with your friends and family. Every business out there is trying to grow their business. So you just have to come up with your process of what that looks like and be intentional with it. This is probably one of the easiest ways to get a lead. You don't purchase it. You give them a great experience. They have a reason to send people to you. It's just coming up with your process of how you execute on all of that. So let me just go through the ABCDE one more time. So it's affirmation. Ask them some sort of question and get them nodding their head about the experience they just had, or if you were able to save them money, great. You can't guarantee that though. You can't guarantee the experience, right? You're going to address their questions. You're going to make them feel comfortable. You're going to be encouraging, things like that. So you can control that piece. So get them nodding their head. B and C. Help them brainstorm who they know by throwing out specific categories of who you're looking for. So make sure you know what that is, and then the D is develop. When they give you an indication of somebody that might be a good connection, ask questions about that person. You just need one piece of information to connect with them when you actually do. All right. And then the E is to execute. How will you execute gathering the contact information? And it could just be that they pull out their phone and share the contact. It's that easy, right? And then you just, and then you have a plan on when you do call them. If it's not a warm intro, the person is like, oh yeah, call him, he'll be fine. All right, well, your friend told me to call you, then be totally fine with this. But here's, so it's just being natural with that. So, all right, does that help?
Yes. Huge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think kind of on the word track thing, having it's really less about saying this exact thing this exact way and more about having the structure of how to ask this. And it's I could just scribble out there, oh, and by the way, referral, thank you, appreciate it. Having this framework to work off of. And just implement it as many times as you can until it becomes a habit, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. So.
Yeah.
Like you said, scripting it at the very beginning so there's no surprises, and then they're not in the rush, and having that to plant the seed to harvest it at the end.
It's really easy to put it on your agenda. So if you use an agenda, whether it be verbal or written, where you have, okay, thanks for coming in today. I know that you're in here to talk about auto insurance and, hey, here's what I promise you're gonna leave with. You're gonna leave with all sorts of education about your auto insurance limits. You should have them and ask you a ton of questions to make sure that we have the right coverage. Other things that I've added onto our conversation. Right? And then you can say, hey, we're gonna talk about home, like I don't have your home yet. Multi-policy discount, like all of those things. So we'll address that a little bit. Hey, I help all my clients with life insurance planning. So I can see here that you don't have your life insurance with us or with me. So I'm gonna ask you a little bit about that. I'm gonna ask who helps you with your retirement planning, right? Because I have a financial advisor that is part of my team as an expert in that field. I refer all my clients over to that financial advisor. And then I'm gonna ask you to help me build my business, because that's what good business owners do. All right, so just be thinking that as we go through this process, you know, there might be somebody that comes to mind that might. All right, let's talk about your auto insurance. Very easy. I introed specifically like what we were gonna talk about. And I didn't say we're gonna spend a lot of time with it. I said we're gonna touch on this, right? And so there should be no surprises whatsoever. Since I intro that on an agenda, that I'm gonna ask them to help me build my business, that we're gonna talk about life insurance planning, that I'm gonna ask them who helps them with their retirement plan, and oh, I don't have your home. Let me get that so we can get a multi-policy discount. What am I missing?
I have a question for you. So for like a referral fee, like if they sign up, how does that work with country? If like obviously you don't, if they sign up, I would want to give something back to the person that, hey, they took on their book, but I don't want to just give something if I just get their information and they didn't sign up. What is allowed with country? Is there like a gift card or?
Those are state limits, Jimmy. So for referrals or gifting or anything, it's a max of $100 of value per person per year. Right, that's the compliant limit. Now you may have COIs that give you referrals all the time, and you may have an arrangement with them, gift cards, things like that, but you shouldn't be. I'm saying this because I'm your leader, you know, and I want everyone to be compliant. You shouldn't be gifting more than $100 of value to one person. Now, I know there's many people who, hey, let's go to a game. Let's, you know, I want to host you. It goes over 100. So, but
Gotcha.
if it's abusive, that's where you get yourself in trouble.
Okay.
Any other questions? That's pretty much what I have. You know, here's my encouragement for you is as you're either running cards or running reviews or meeting with prospects, current clients, like take some time to really develop what this word track, what this talk track, what my process will look like in these appointments. Right? If you want to, hey, if you're like, Christina, I've developed kind of my process, my talk track, but I want to practice it first, please reach out to me. Like, I would love to role play. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to be the client or be, you know, the prospect and ask tough questions and really help you overcome any hesitancy or fear that you have of really being confident in that space, the referral space. Right? There's no better way than to let's over and over and over create scenarios where somebody might ask you a question that you're fearful of, right? We want to overcome the fear of it. Jeremy.
So if I'm jumping the gun here, we can wait a little bit. I think the third session it said was like appointment foundations. In that one, will we go over in more detail, like setting an agenda and like proper?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because that's something where it's like I get the gist, but kind of like this, having a specific framework is nice.
There's, and I'm telling you, I will intro to you guys that process. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but very intentional with all the holistic, kind of subjects, areas of conversation, however you want to call it. I was very intentional. I was very consistent, and I did this with every one of my clients. And I'm telling, and for those of you, I think besides Matt and Gab, those agents that are on the call, all of you have received book of business. All right, and I will just tell you, when I transitioned from an employee agent back in the day, right, and I transitioned to be a career rep, which means I moved to Washington, and I got a large book of business that, you know, they said, hey, here's all your clients, just like very similar to all of you, right? I earned my third All-American, and I never marketed myself at all. All I did was run appointments with that current book. And they got an experience from me that they had never had before with any other country agent that they had been with before. And I will tell you, just real quick, I was meeting with a couple, and I went through my intro. So Jeremy, you're talking about like, what does that look like? And I was very consistent, no matter who I was meeting with. And so I got to the part where I said, hey, who is helping you with your retirement planning? Because I'm an expert in that area. And I was. That was my favorite thing to talk about. And they both look at each other, and they're like this look of, do you think she can help me? You know, she can help us. And so they said, well, we have one question for you. They said, what do you know about a beneficiary trust? And, you know, you might be sitting there going, oh my gosh, what would I say if somebody asked me that? I want to be consistent, but that's what I'm afraid of. Is they're going to ask me a question that I don't know, right? Here's the funny part, because I was studying at that point to get my LUTCF and my designation. And I had just taken one of the classes, the courses, was on trust and planning and helping your client plan with different types of trust. And I was like, in my head, honestly, I was like, you've got to be that question, you know? So I kind of rattled off what I could remember about a beneficiary trust. Well, normally it's like something has occurred where somebody's come into some money, and there are stipulations where you have to put it in a trust. It has to, you know, stay there for a certain length of time, blah, 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 depending on the you know, however it was created. And they're like, okay, you know what you're talking about. Now I didn't, like, I totally mumbled my way through it, right? But they said, well, we have $1.8 million that we have to put into an account, and I think you can help us. Sure. 1.8 million. What is that? You know? So it was just, like, if you don't talk about it, they don't know. They basically said we had no idea that our other agent even did anything like that. And I sat there and went, they never talked about it. Like, I know this, right? So I will help you guys. It's that third session where we lay the foundation of your appointment, like laying it from the very beginning. And Matt and Gabby, this goes for you guys too. Like, this is, you can get really, really good at this piece. Then people are going to come, they're going to be like, where's Matt? Well, I don't know who Andy is. Like, I know Matt, you know? Or Gabby, I don't know who Gary is. I don't know. That we're just to be very, like, create a process. The most successful agents in all of country, and insurance in general, are those that have a process, and they're persistent with it, they're consistent with it, and flex when needed, right? They control the room when it comes to picking up clients. All right. Hopefully you guys walked away with something today, whether it just be one thing, right? That you can take and you can implement even if you have appointments today, you're gonna have conversations with prospects, conversations with clients today. Just remember, all right, what was one thing that maybe you can implement that will move your business forward today? Regards to referrals.
Thank you very much. There's 5 things, the
Yeah.
ABCDE.
Any other questions that I can help with? All right, what I can promise you.